Have you ever noticed someone who has weathered a lifetime of storms, losses, betrayals, sleepless nights, disappointments that should have carved deep furrows into their skin, and yet carries a serenity in their face that seems to defy biology? You attribute it to genetics, to luck, to some cosmetic regimen that person won't share. But Dr. Sterling understood something more unsettling. Time, by itself, makes no one grow old. What ages you is everything you refused to feel. Most people believe aging is a chronological process. They wake up one day, look in the mirror, and blame the years. But Dr. Sterling observed a silent pattern among those he called individuals in the process of self-actualization, people who had done the difficult internal work. These individuals, even after decades of real suffering, seemed to carry less weight in their faces than people 20 years their junior. It wasn't vanity, it wasn't a filter, it was something structural, something that happens when the soul stops fighting against itself. You have likely met such a person. Perhaps it was a 70-year-old man whose eyes looked like those of someone who hasn't yet been broken by the world. Perhaps it was a 50-year-old woman who carried a lightness in her face incompatible with the story she told about her own life. You wondered, how? How is it possible that this person who has lost so much can still smile like that? And the conventional answer, oh, she takes care of her skin, is a dodge, a way to avoid looking at what is really happening. Because what is happening is the opposite of what you imagine. These people do not look younger because they suffered less. They look younger because they suffered completely. They traversed the pain instead of storing it. They allowed every emotion to reach its end, rather than pushing it down the moment discomfort began. And it is in this almost invisible detail that the truth Dr. Sterling spent his life trying to communicate resides. What seals your face are not the experiences you lived through. It is the part of those experiences you did not allow to finish. Think of an open file in the background of a computer. One open file is no burden, neither are 10, but 1,000 suspended files, each demanding an invisible thread of energy to remain available, will crash the machine. Your body functions the same way. Every interrupted emotion is still running in the background, waiting for you to finish feeling it. And the consumption of that waiting, multiplied by years, is what shows when the light hits your face. Dr. Sterling did not see aging as a defeat of the body. He saw it as a psychological report card. Every emotion you repressed, every conversation you didn't have, every anger you swallowed to appear polite, every tear you suppressed to appear strong, all of this, according to him, does not disappear. It merely migrates, from consciousness to tissue, from internal dialogue to posture, from silence to permanent muscle tension. He called this the accumulation of unprocessed material, and it is important to understand the weight of that expression. It is not a metaphor, it is a literal description. When you do not finish feeling something, that something remains active within you. A trauma from 15 years ago that you never allowed to reach its bottom continues, at this very instant, to demand resources from your nervous system. And the nervous system, in turn, demands resources from the body. And the body, in turn, pays that bill with your appearance. It is not time that wrinkles your forehead. It is the decade you spent knitting it without knowing. It is not life that dims your glow. It is the silent effort of carrying versions of yourself that you never were. Dr. Sterling said, the unconscious does not forget. And the body is simply the place where the unconscious writes what the mind refused to read. Observe someone you know who looks 10 years older than they are. Look carefully, without judgment. In general, it is not the suffering that is there on their face. It is the containment. It is the work, invisible, of pushing down what could not be said. It is the accumulated fatigue of pretending that everything is fine in environments where nothing was fine. Your face registers, in slow motion, the history of everything you did not allow to surface. Each "never mind" costs a piece of your expression. Each "I won't even comment" leaves a microscopic mark that no one sees in isolation, but which 20 years later composes an entire map. And perhaps that is exactly why something inside you has stalled lately. Perhaps you feel you are aging too fast, not in the body, but somewhere deeper, that you have lost a vividness you cannot name. That is why I prepared the Awakening Protocol for you. It is a 60-day path anchored in the depth psychology of Dr. Sterling, in which every day you receive a lesson, a surgical question, and a micro-action to begin dismantling this silent accumulation. It is not motivation. It is self-actualization applied to routine, translated into gestures that fit into your day. The access link is in the first pinned comment of this video. If something here has resonated with your silent exhaustion, comment just the word "awake" below. This is your first gesture of commitment to yourself. Now observe something that Dr. Sterling described in an almost clinical way. Everything you need to pretend consumes real metabolic energy. The person you perform as at work, the person you perform as with your family, the person you perform as on social media, the person you perform as for your own partner in avoided conversations. Each of these masks is a tensed version of you. And these versions do not sleep when you sleep. They remain there, ready to be worn the second the phone rings. The exhaustion you feel after socializing is not physical tiredness. It is the exhaustion of performing a version of yourself to keep others comfortable. It is the invisible cost of monitoring every word, every gesture, every reaction, so as not to spoil the image you built stone by stone over the years. And this cost is charged in hormones, in tension in the jaw in the middle of the night, in small muscle contractions around the eyes that become permanent, in a breath that becomes shallower and shallower without you even noticing you are breathing that way. The human nervous system was not made to sustain a persona full-time. It was made to alternate effort and rest, exposure and withdrawal, mask and face. When the mask sticks, rest disappears. And when rest disappears, the body begins to age from the inside out, at a speed that no cream reverses and no gym compensates for. Have you ever noticed that some people age more in the months when they are most successful? It is no coincidence. It is the price of performance. The more they need to be the version others admire, the less room is left to be the version that breathes. Their faces begin to reflect this, a rigidity in the features, a light that does not reach the eyes, a beauty technically preserved, but curiously uninhabited. You look at the photo and realize there is someone there, but the person is not home. Dr. Sterling would say that this is the face of someone who is winning on the outside and losing on the inside, someone whose persona has swallowed their being. And when the persona swallows the being, the body ceases to be inhabited and begins to be merely used. A body merely used ages like any tool under constant use, rapidly, irregularly, without repair, without return. And here is the most surgical inversion of all of Dr. Sterling's work. It is not pain that ages you, it is the resistance to pain. Reread that sentence, because it contradicts almost everything you were taught. You grew up believing that suffering is what breaks you, that what marks you are the losses, the abandonments, the insults kept inside. But Dr. Sterling observed in thousands of patients a different pattern. The most devastated were not those who had suffered the most. They were those who had suffered without permission to feel. Pain, when traversed in its entirety, passes. It has an arc. It rises, reaches a peak, descends, dissolves. This is the natural pattern of any living emotion. But repressed pain has no arc. It has latency. It remains suspended, waiting to be felt, occupying space in the nervous system year after year, like a door left ajar that you cannot close because you never looked at what was on the other side. Every time you told yourself, now is not the time to cry, every time you swallowed your anger because it's not worth arguing, every time you smiled while something inside you wanted to scream, you didn't eliminate the emotion. You merely transferred its channel, from consciousness to tissue, from the verbal to the muscular, from the recognizable to the invisible. The emotion remained alive, only in a place where your language can no longer reach. And the invisible has weight. This weight, accumulated over decades, is what we call psychological aging. It is not the number of years. It is the amount of things you still needed to feel and never allowed yourself to. The things you buried to be loved. Your swallowed anger, your hidden ambition, your ignored boundaries, your deferred tears, your silenced desire, did not die. They leak. They leak as resentment in your facial expression. They leak as stiffness in your neck. They leak as that exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. They leak as a slight hardness around the mouth that only appears when you relax enough for it to be seen. And they leak, above all, as extra years on your face. If you are hearing this with the exact sensation of, "This is what I feel and have never been able to name," this is the sign. The awakening protocol was built for this moment. 60 days to begin unlocking what has remained suspended. The link is in the first pinned comment. Do not delay. Each day postponed is another day your body carries what your mind refused to look at. And this is where what Dr. Sterling called self-actualization comes in. It is not enlightenment. It is not becoming a good person. It is a much more sober process. The refusal, finally, to continue sustaining versions of yourself that cost more than they yield. Most people live as actors in their own lives. They wake up with a role to play. The dedicated son, the available mother, the flawless professional, the present friend, the patient partner. These roles are not in themselves bad. The problem is when they become prison cells, when you can no longer step out of them, when the body no longer knows who it is off stage. Awakening, in the language of Dr. Sterling, is the instant you realize you are exhausted in a way that no amount of sleep can resolve. It is the specific fatigue of someone who performs too much to be loved too little. And what this fatigue asks for is not more rest. It is less character. When you begin to abandon this performance, something curious happens to the body. Not the following week, but over months. The face relaxes. The shoulders drop without you needing to tell them to. The breath deepens without you noticing. The lines of tension that seemed part of your anatomy begin to draw themselves differently. Not because you became younger, but because you stopped spending energy to sustain a mask that weighed more than you admitted. And that is why spiritually awakened people look younger. It is not that time spares them. It is that they stopped adding weight to time. They stopped carrying dead versions of themselves. And without that weight, the face returns to being just a face instead of a monument to effort. When you stop performing your strength, the people who depended on that performance leave. This is not betrayal. It is decantation. It is life separating what needed the true you from what only needed your mask. Painful, yes. Necessary, even more so. And the curious thing is that after this process, the face of those who remained, and your own face, begins to reflect a reality that is smaller, more honest, and for that very reason, more luminous. And now the part, more technical than what Dr. Sterling taught, translated into something your body understands. Every emotion has a natural cycle of completion. Sadness needs to reach the tear. Anger needs to reach expression. Fear needs to reach the tremor. When these cycles are interrupted, and in our culture they almost always are, the emotion remains stuck halfway, frozen at the exact point where you forbade yourself from continuing. Think of an ocean wave. A wave begins, rises, breaks, and dissolves into the sand. That is the design. Now imagine that, the second before it breaks, someone freezes it in mid-air. The wave wouldn't disappear. It would remain there, suspended, with all its energy held back, never reaching the relief of the break. This is exactly what happens inside you when an emotion is interrupted before its conclusion. It doesn't go away. It waits, frozen, occupying the space where your lightness could be. And your body is the ocean where thousands of these frozen waves have accumulated throughout your life. Each one of them continues in the background, demanding resources that could be available for your vitality. Imagine how much energy you would get back if half of these waves could finally finish breaking. Integration in the Dr. Sterling sense is not about overcoming these emotions. It is about allowing them to finally end. It is unfreezing the wave, feeling the sadness to the end, even if it takes time, feeling the anger to the edge, even if it scares you, feeling the fear until its dissolution, even if it seems safer to push it back down. It is not violent catharsis. It is authorization. It is letting the body conclude what the circumstances years ago did not allow. When an emotion is fully lived, it releases, not just in metaphor. Real physiological release. The nervous system discharges, the muscles loosen, the breath reorganizes itself, the heart finds a rhythm it hadn't known for years, and the face, that instrument that silently registers each of these changes, begins to redraw itself from the inside out. People who have done this work carry in their faces a specific kind of lightness. It is not the naive lightness of those who have never suffered. It is the adult lightness of those who have suffered and allowed the suffering to end. There is a difference. The former is fragile, the latter is unshakable, and it is the second one that makes someone in their 60s look 40, not by magic, but by arithmetic. There is less suspended weight in the body. And it is exactly this work that the Awakening Protocol leads day after day for 60 days. Each lesson is a key. Each question is a precise cut at the point where you have been sustaining an internal lie. Each micro-action is a frozen wave you finally let break. It is not reading, it is ritual. Something that happens at the level of the body, not just the head. The link is in the first pinned comment. You can keep pushing it off for later. Another year, 5 more, 10 more. But the body collects this debt, and time does not return what was not lived. Decide now. Access is right below, and your next self begins exactly at the instant you open it. And the final element, perhaps the most subtle and the most decisive, is presence. Dr. Sterling called it alignment with the self, that deepest part of you that does not perform, does not negotiate, does not ask for approval. When your daily life begins to approach this part, something in the entire system reorganizes. Internal conflicts diminish. Decisions become clearer. The mental noise that consumed half your energy simply lowers its volume, effortlessly. Living in alignment means spending less energy to exist. And energy that is not spent in internal conflict remains available for vitality. Vitality is the visible substance of youth, and it has nothing to do with biological age. It has to do with how much of your energy reaches the surface of your life without being intercepted by internal conflict along the way. Aligned people have different eyes, you have noticed. It is not an optical effect, it is that their gaze moves through reality without the permanent filter of, "What will they think of me?" This filter, though invisible, is exorbitantly expensive, and when it falls away, the gaze opens, the expression settles, the breath deepens, and the entire body begins to communicate a youthfulness that did not come from time, but from an honest surrender to one's own being. You can identify it when you see it. There is a moment in rare conversations when you realize the person in front of you is not calculating their response. They are not editing their face. They are not performing a reaction. They are simply there. And that simple presence, maskless, produces an effect on their face that no cosmetic could ever replicate. The light of someone who is not consuming energy to appear to be who they are. This is the end of the path that Dr. Sterling pointed out. Not eternal youth, not continuous happiness, but something rarer, the coincidence between who you are and who you are being. When this coincidence is sustained, time loses some of its power over you, not because you defeat it, but because you stop paying with your own body the price for what you refuse to be. You can close this video now and return to your routine. Keep the acceptable mask. Push another decade of unfinished emotions into your fabric. Believe that the mirror will still deceive you for a while longer. Or you can accept what has just been said for what it is. A clinical description of the price you are paying at this very instant, in silence, without even noticing. The Awakening Protocol is in the first pinned comment. The choice is not between buying or not buying. It is between continuing to accumulate or beginning to let go. The illusion is over. Choose.